Hello and welcome to Fresh Face Comics, the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friends through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me as always is Jacob Licklider, the aforementioned newbie.
And welcome to the third round of questioning if Joey is going to be able to pronounce Greek names from Greek mythology.
Jacob, you know what? I was just telling my brother about this. What was? Oh yeah, because of the Star Trek video that came out not too long ago. I told my brother, I was like, Jacob, just do yourself a favor and listen. Even if you're never gonna read the volumes, just go listen to those two episodes. They're just 2.5 hours straight of me mispronouncing a Greek name, Jacob correcting me, and me going "fuck you" and just getting angrier as the episode goes on.
So if you can't tell, we are returning to the wonderful George Perez run of Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Volume 3?
Volume 3. This is numbers 25 to 35. We're covering 11 issues today, and I'm really excited to talk about this volume.
I have so many thoughts.
Also, last episode we forgot to completely to plug Fresh Face One Shots. So go watch Fresh Face One Shots. We're covering Superman, Batman, Brave and the Bold, soon to be Wonder Woman, and the DC Pride anthology we just covered recently. So go check all those out. We're also recording this the same day as we're recording the DC Pride anthology video, and I'm a little like I'm too into the zone of recording things already. So I realize already I'm coming into this episode a lot more chaotic than I usually start off these episodes. So anyway, Jacob.
Yes.
Starting off our non-spoiler section, what is Wonder Woman by George Perez, Volume 3 about? Give us the broad strokes.
So the broad strokes. Well, it's directly following up on some of the stories from Volume 2, especially. It is, oddly enough, it's the point where George Perez, I already thought he hit his stride, but every time I think he's hit his stride, somehow he hits it even harder.
Yeah, dude. Like, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, and I feel bad saying this just 3 minutes into the episode, but
this is my favorite.
This is the best one. Yeah, this is the best one of the three we've covered so far. Like, rereading it was just such a joy. I fucking adore this volume so much.
And here's the thing, for me, I knew going in, this was the volume where Perez stopped doing the interior art. He still does the cover arts for the issues. And I was just a little worried that it would suffer, but I think not being so shackled to because it's George Perez, he goes super hard on art, and having to write a script, I think something just clicked, and the ball started rolling. It's great.
I love this collection in particular because of the 11 issues, 2 of them are like tie-ins to a bigger story, and the other 9 are pretty much all one story. And George Perez tells this massive epic that I'm just so excited to talk about and cover. It's really something special in the run.
And it's an epic that is pulling directly from what he's already established in very different ways. Also, on the quick topic of the 2 tie-ins, this is also where it feels like them being tie-ins also doesn't really interfere with the run itself. Perhaps because of placement, but also because Perez is keeping not full story threads going ahead, but he keeps a couple of story threads into these tie-ins, so readers who are just reading that run won't feel like it's a challenge of the gods thing where plot threads are dropped.
We've had this in literally every Wonder Woman volume we've covered so far. We had Challenge of the Gods back in Volume 1. We had the tie-ins to Action Comics and Superman back in Volume 2. And now here with a story called Invasion. I think these are easily the most accessible tie-ins of the 3 volumes.
I don't know if it's Perez just getting the hang of doing these sorts of tie-ins.
I've never read Invasion, but I feel like it may also have to do with the fact that Invasion I may have given its individual tie-in titles a bit more freedom.
Perhaps. Which would also help.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, shall we get into Twitter questions?
Oh, yes, because we have quite a few, surprisingly.
We do. Let's start off with our good friend Kian the Quark. Says, did you know in Italy Wonder Woman is La Wonderfrau?
First off, I don't think that is not Italian.
That is not Italian. That's French and German in there. And
Yeah. Also, Wonder Woman's a Greek character, Kian. For your joke to work, you could have gone Greek.
He's gonna keep doing this. We can't.
He's gonna keep doing it. We can't
stop him, and it's just.
We need to embrace it. Embrace the chaos.
Anyway, our next question comes from Rules Panda at Joey can read this. He's back. Says, do you prefer Diana with or without a Greek accent? Speaking on her Greek heritage. So I like for me, like in my mind, like I mean, I always hear Susan Eisenberg. That's just the go-to voice for me.
That's the voice I hear too.
But obviously, like a Greek accent is accurate to the character. I'm not really picky. I don't think I prefer one or the other, but I think because my mind just defaults to Susan Eisenberg so easily.
I will say part of it's also a thing with generally comics that unless, and this is already kind of a double-edged sword, unless like the dialogue is phonetically spelled out in an accent, I won't always drift to a particular accent based on the heritage. It'll often be based on an adaptation whose voice, like
yeah, definitely. Actually, wait, so because you actually haven't heard that much Susan Eisenberg Wonder Woman.
I have heard a decent chunk.
How many episodes into Justice League are you?
5, which isn't a lot, but
that's 2 stories.
That's 2 stories. But
much more. Damn it, Jacob! I want to do that bonus episode.
No, I'm working on it. It's been a month.
a Pride month, if you will. Fucking hell. Okay. Our next question comes from Jamie at Jamie_season7 says, I don't think anyone's ever said this before, but George Perez's art is good. And
it's especially funny that he says this on the volume with the least amount of Perez art.
I don't think Jamie's actually read this run.
No, he hasn't. But Jamie, do yourself a favor and do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Read George Perez's Wonder Woman because it's pretty damn great. Our next question comes from English Giraffe at English_Giraffe. Do you feel as if Perez explores the Greek mythology well in his Wonder Woman material?
Oh, okay. So, when discussing adaptations of Greek mythology, it's always important to note that Greek mythology is a mythology. There isn't like a specific canon because it's, what survives of several religions that are generally dead religions. I think Perez clearly loves at least the sources of Greek mythology that he's drawing from and does it fairly well and fairly interestingly. I believe if I had to make one critique, I think it is coming from very much a 20th century perspective than a 21st century perspective.
It's almost as if it was written in the 20th century.
That's also because it was written in the 1980s.
Yeah.
But, like, that's not really a problem. It just means that there's an attitude in the way that Perez is going to write, like, our godly characters and the way he's going to characterize them with their dialogue that you can see directly from earlier translations of Greek works. If you've read those, which I think is interesting, far more of an academic answer to the question. But like that, I think it's really good, and I like that Perez does a mix of mythological stories and sort of modern day stories, and tries to keep them very intertwined. Also, Hermes is a major character in this volume, and I wasn't expecting it.
I love it. I love what he does with Hermes in this volume. I mean, I've always loved the development of Hermes throughout the whole run, but here especially, it's just it's so good. Anyway, our next set of questions comes from our friend Mason at the GD256. His first question says, other than the first 2 volumes, does this have any prerequisites? So it does tie into some, as we mentioned already, tie into some larger story arcs. In this volume specifically, a story called Invasion. But as we said, those are pretty accessible. And obviously, I would say you do need to read the first 2 volumes to understand.
Yeah, you need to read the first 2 volumes. But honestly, I'd recommend them as like an entry point to the character of Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. I'll say it, the way Perez characterizes Diana, of all the things that we've read so far, because she's popped up quite a bit in Justice League. She's popped up for smaller appearances. Perez is my favorite.
She was in The Dark Knight Strikes Again, our most beloved appearance.
Yeah. Perez is my favorite. Like, the way Perez characterizes her and writes her.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Mason's second question says, rank the 3 volumes.
Okay. I knew this was coming. I think 3, 2, 1, at least for me.
One at the bottom?
Yeah, 1 at the bottom. But
I
like,
would say 2 at the bottom, 1 and then 3 at the top, personally.
yeah. So I think I just like some of the stories in Volume 2 just slightly more. It's also say these are also all 3 really good, solid volumes. Like,
oh, they're so good. I think, whereas like the biggest highlight of Volume 2 is like the Cersei story, I would say the biggest highlight of Volume 1 is the first big Ares arc, and that's just a stronger story altogether, I think, as like an origin for the character, and the way that we defeat Ares in the end. Like I love that story
yeah.
altogether.
And honestly, with the first 2 volumes, it's ranking them. That's going to come down to personal preference. Like, it is going to come down to which one you like more. I think 3 is the best because it's the most consistent and easiest reading experience, mainly because you don't have those those tie-ins that are the tie-ins here aren't chopping up the story nearly as much. Which was a big issue. We also have more interesting and nuanced characterization for one character who I had some issues with in the previous episodes. Um, not necessarily absolutely perfect. It's still aged a little bit, but Perez has given this character more
there's
time.
A lot more to do here with this character
And development. Yeah.
Mason's third question then says, if the lasso of truth was used on you, where would you want it? And I don't know what that's supposed to mean, Mason.
I think it's a sex thing. Is this a sex thing?
I think. I could be wrong, but I think. I don't know.
I don't know.
Mason, I could just take down that episode with you that just went up last time. I could do that, but I won't.
I was gonna say, but you won't, because I had so much fun with that episode.
Yeah, it was a great episode, and also you're probably gonna be on the podcast again really soon. So just
probably. He is going to be on the podcast.
Watch your language, Mason. Anyway, our last question comes from Discord, actually. Our friend Andrew, who's also been on the podcast recently, says, anyone could gush about all day about George Perez's strength as an artist, but what do you feel are his top strengths as a writer? Jacob?
His female characters, especially for the 1980s. Like, he's varied. He doesn't fall into the trap of making strong female characters men, but as women. Like, is fascinating. He tries to get varied perspectives in who they are. Occasionally it hasn't aged well, but that's something that Perez has done really. His characterization, just as a writer, has done really, really well. It's also something that you notice in the New Teen Titans that we've read when the story credit is Wolfman and Perez, the characterization just is ever so slightly stronger.
I agree. Yeah.
Also, crafting ongoing arcs seems to be a really strong suit, where like an issue is somehow both standalone but also integral to an arc. Like,
because like that's a great point, actually, because we as I already mentioned, like most of this volume is one story arc. It's a 9-issue story, but I know exactly what my favorite issue of the story is. Like, there's one specific one in there that I love more than the others.
It also makes like an almost recap issue really, really work and really, really good.
Yep.
Yeah, like Perez. This is like my favorite thing we've read by George Perez. Like,
I definitely agree.
So far,
we've read a fair bit of like really good George Perez. The fact that this is the top really just show his quality as a creator in general. And what a fucking talent he was. Like, oh my god, I love him.
I'll also say the cover of this volume. Well, I understand why they chose it. It's a very dynamic pose, and it's very, very nice.
Mm-hmm. It's also got Guy Gardner. I mean, Guy Gardner just sells, you know?
Yeah. It also kind of betrays. I had a feeling that because of the cover, we would have more of the DC universe than we did.
I would almost flip the front and back covers.
Yeah.
Because I adore that. You know what? Actually, I'm probably going to make that back cover the thumbnail of this podcast.
I was gonna say we probably should because
it's such a great cover. Oh, I
it's
love
the
that.
best. I think it's the best cover of this
Of the run.
volume.
Oh, I think of the run so far.
Very possibly.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
really love that cover.
I also really love his cover for the first issue, Wonder
Yeah,
Woman
it's a
number
great cover.
one. But yeah, um,
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm so happy to be talking about more Wonder Woman. It really does just, and the fact that it's George Perez too. I don't know. I could talk about this shit forever. And the fact that we're halfway through the run now. Well, we will be by the end of this episode at least.
yes,
It's wonderful, for lack of a better term.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, it's like, yeah, and there's just a lot to talk about. Do yourself a favor and read this run. I feel like this run could be someone's introduction to comics. Like,
Probably. I mean, I think
uh,
if there is that small issue of the fact that like each of these volumes so far have had tie-ins to other stories.
yes,
And you
but
are
like,
able to ignore those maybe a bit less in volume 2 than you are able to in volumes 1 and 3. Because volume 2 is just missing a big chunk where Diana has this whole meeting with Superman.
yeah,
Um,
but it's also just
but otherwise, like, yeah, you could totally enjoy this run on its own.
yeah. Um, it's also just a really good creator. Once again, the editor is of the run. The main editor has been Karen Berger, at least at this point.
She's the best. Oh, we love Karen
And
Berger.
she is an editor we will sing the praises on every time we notice her name.
We don't call it editors all too often on this podcast, but she's the one that I think we've consistently called out whenever she popped up. Yeah, so it's just important there. Also, just everyone read more Wonder Woman. She's the most overlooked member of the Trinity, and you need to read more Wonder Woman. She's fucking awesome.
Yes.
All right. I guess that does it. Let's get into our spoiler section. Here we go.
Yeah, so if you don't want spoilers, skip to the end of the podcast to see what we're doing next time. I have
Yes.
a very strong guess that I'm 99.9% sure is correct.
I also have a surprise for you at the end of the episode.
Oh? That's scary.
It's a good surprise. You'll like it.
Okay. But if you haven't done that, but this is your final spoiler cutoff warning as we jump.
And as always, I will leave this volume and the book that we're covering next time linked down in the description below. You can buy them on Amazon. I'll leave those links down there in the description.
Yes. Next time there will be, I believe next time's a double booker.
Next time is a double booker. Yeah, I told you that already. So yeah. Pick those up, read these books. I like to think I've mostly chosen good books for the podcast. Yeah, I don't know. Just I like to think I wouldn't steer you wrong, as I haven't steered Jacob wrong for most of our 44 episodes we've done.
There is one that you steered me wrong,
but I purposely steered you wrong.
Yes, that was a special event episode.
Exactly.
So we'll have no restraint on spoilers as we jump into Wonder Woman number 25.
Yes, which is where our cover comes from. We've got some more JLI actually here on the cover, which is really cool to see because we've read some JLI tie-ins before. And
what's been so interesting about the JLI is that I'm guessing in that run, the team roster was a rotating roster. It had to be, right?
Yeah, because even here we see it changed a little bit from when we read them back in Suicide Squad.
And I know that run was
here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I know that run was there's the JLI by Giffen and I believe DeMatteis. Yeah. And then it evolved back into the JLA by the early 90s by the time we got to
which we've also read before back in Death of Superman.
Yeah, so it's all what Jurgens was writing those? Dan Jurgens, I believe, was writing those issues.
Was on it at that point. Yep.
But yes. I love this cover. I wouldn't make it the cover of the collection because it is just a bit misleading as to what's going to take up the majority.
Everyone is after that sweet Rocket Red content. I mean, come on.
Yes. But the first thing, Etta Candy being a badass.
Yes, Etta Candy's the fucking best, and I love seeing her here. She's under fire. She's fucking dodging fire from above, and it's great.
And Perez's narration gives us some very nice context for sort of the basic plot of what's happening with Invasion. Not enough to necessarily spoil the event story, but
Yeah.
enough to like make you understand like the gaps that you would have. Because we are in the South Pacific.
Yep.
There's a military training station. Things are going awry. Etta is, trying, trying to communicate with sort of her strike team. She's on a strike team, which is just Etta Candy's a badass. Like,
Yeah, she's great. We then
um,
go over to Themyscira, where we're over on Paradise Island, and I know we said this name on one of the last episodes. I'm gonna lose my fucking mind when I get this wrong. Is it Manalapi?
yeah, uh,
Come
yeah,
on, did I get it right?
that's pretty close. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
what is that? Come on.
uh, Manalapi is maybe Menelaiope, but I believe Manalapi also
Okay, so you
works.
didn't even know. Okay, so
Yeah,
fuck you.
this is the one
Okay,
that
cool.
also you also have Yubo, but Menelapi's the oracle of
Yeah,
the Amazons.
she's freaking out. She's having these horrible visions. Danny goes to investigate it. This is there's a darkness coming from man's world. She begins to leave the island and is immediately met by a strike force of these ships. We go into our title page here, the Burning School, which is just a cool title. I don't know, I dig that.
It's a
Um,
cool title.
we also
We
see that in
also
the writer credits, Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis helped George Perez on this one, as of course these are tie-ins with JLI and Invasion, and so they're here for that reason, obviously.
we are
Um,
also proudly introducing Chris Marinin as the penciler. Now,
yes,
Marinin stylistically, he's not Perez, but he fits very nicely with
it
Perez.
does. Every now
Uh,
and then, I'm not a huge fan of a Chris Marinin face, but it's
so
they're pretty few and far between. I
here's
must
the
say
thing: some of this I think also might be Bleiberg on inks. Might be some of the
that
issues
would make
that
sense.
I was having because it's very much a thing where sometimes the inks might be affecting the way the pencils are seen. But Marinin, it's great to see a new artist. It's great to see an artist with an equal variation from sort of this what's the standard 20th century comics art
Mhm.
that you have. Like Marinin has his own style, he has his own uniqueness, and that is always great.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
it also
Um,
frees up Perez to actually really focus on where his arc is going now that it's a big arc.
yeah.
Uh, and
Um,
he's not overworked.
Yeah, but we learn that these ships are being flown by Thanagarians. Did you know anything about the Thanagarians other than that they're Hawkman and Hawkgirl?
Hawkman and Hawkgirl. I know there's like some sort of like Ran Thanagar war. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen that. I don't know what that
I
is.
feel like I'm going to bring it up again for the second time already this episode. You should keep watching Justice League because there's a lot of
Yes,
Thanagarian focus as you keep going through the show, and you
I
learn more about
will. I
Hawkgirl,
will. I
and
promise. I
it's kind
promise.
of like the whole like last arc of the show is Thanagarian focused, but whatever. I don't care. Um, anyway.
You don't care. You so obviously care.
Jacob, I just want you to watch this show. It's so good.
I'm
Um,
working on it. It's uh we have some great action. Um
mhm,
um and we have Diana basically eventually throwing herself into this fight.
mhm.
Protecting her home basically on her own.
Yeah,
Uh and like she tries to lasso one of their ships.
yeah, and it
Like
immediately sort of backfires on her. It puts her right in their line of fire, and she gets shot down. Um,
and it's
uh,
implied that it goes into man's world, and then it might. I'm not entirely sure if it explodes, and that's the explosion Etta gets trapped in.
I
Um,
guess, or
I guess
if nothing else, it's a cool transition, like from scene to scene, to have those two
yes.
explosions sort of linking that page. That's nice. But we go over to Wakefield, Massachusetts, where we catch back up with Jacob's favorite character of all time,
Ah,
Julia
look,
Capitelis.
look.
I saw your tweet, Jacob. You are the world's biggest Julia Capitelis fan.
I will gladly listen. Mr. Tom King. Hi. There's a non-zero chance you may stumble on this somehow. I don't know. Um, could you include her in your Wonder Woman run, please? I would be grateful. Um, and I'm
Could you
sure
imagine
other.
Julia Capitelis meeting Wonder Woman's daughter?
Ooh.
Could you imagine that?
See, I don't know
Anyway.
anything about uh, discussions for another day.
Yeah, we're back here. We have Vanessa here, and we have Black Canary here, which is very nice to see. I don't know. I love Black Canary. I forget. Have we read anything with Black Canary before?
She has made appearances, is the thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Um, and I know her deal because they did her on Arrow fairly quickly.
They did so. Okay,
But I know they also never actually did her on Arrow.
they did like 3 versions of Arrow, 2 of which they killed off. I think.
Yeah,
It's like, all right, whatever.
I have seen the poorly aged things of the discussion between Mark Guggenheim and Gail Simone, where Gail Simone's like, "Don't do Black Canary dirty," and Mark Guggenheim's like, "We promise we won't." And it's like,
dude, I fucking just Guggenheim. If you someday you will hear a legendary Joey Morgan Mark Guggenheim rant, and it will be great. Um, anyway, but yeah, so Diana shows up here. She finds out what's going on about Etta who went missing. And Steve Trevor is sort of like investigating it. Also,
a different assignment.
There are some editor's notes here about tie-ins to Captain Atom, which obviously we're not reading, but whatever.
What I do think is really, really interesting is that Perez really does capture sort of what an alien invasion would be like, where you have all our main characters having their own jobs to do that are going to be separate and spreading ourselves thin. Which is quite interesting. Also, Diana's mission is essentially going to Fiji to try to find Etta and meeting up with the rest of the Justice League International.
Actually, let's take a look at our lineup here. We have Hawkman and Hawkgirl. We have Blue Beetle, Ted Core Blue Beetle.
Fire and Ice.
Fire and Ice, who are additions from when we last read Suicide Squad. Mr. Miracle, Guy Gardner, Martian Manhunter, and Dimitri Rocket Red himself, who's just, I love him so much. I especially love the way he's characterized in these 2 issues. I love him. He's so good.
See, I never want this run to become so much of Diana interacting with the rest of the DC universe, but I love the way Perez does all these character interactions in the DC universe. Like,
yeah,
like this introductory panel has a lot of dialogue. A lot of dialogue.
But each one, just gives you an extra little nugget of information about how each of these characters interact with each other and what they think of Wonder Woman, and just they're very important little character moments spread throughout this big ass panel with so much dialogue. But it's rewarding. It's not just word salad, like it's really telling you something about everyone here. Which is especially important for someone like us, for people like us, like who are just reading these issues out of context. And you don't quite know where these characters are at because we're not reading JLI along with it, So it's just important to have here. But anyway, Diana is briefed here. I love the way Martian Manhunter is characterized throughout this part of the story. Just really great stuff because he officially is leader of the group. And
at this time, yes,
yeah, it's nice to see.
So we find out that there's an advanced force of Coons, which I believe is the sort of part of the occupying alien force on this island. And it's basically they're going to send Diana in to go and rescue Etta Candy. Which I love Diana's seriousness, but also and sort of almost brutality in these issues, but also very much still kind, very much like this fierce loyalty to her friends. It's a very complex characterization that Perez just does so well.
Yeah.
Also, Guy Gardner gets to be a dick.
Yeah. We've had far too much Guy Gardner redemption recently on the podcast.
I don't know. I also like him. Even redeemed, he's still kind of a dick. So like,
yeah. But yeah, so Diana gets paired up with Dimitri and Guy here, as they go to rescue Etta Candy. And again, I just especially love Diana's interactions with Dimitri. Just they're just really fun conversations with each other.
Yeah, I particularly love there are a few things in the world I would rather be doing, my dear Miss Wonderful Woman. Please call me Diana. And you may call me Dimitri. You can
Guy.
call me Stick to My Stomach.
It's so good. Oh, I love it. Yeah, just so many fun interactions there. They come into contact with the Coons. There's some great action here as they get closer to Edda, who's still trapped in the on this island, jungle, whatever.
Island. It's an island nearish Fiji. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and it's some great action.
Mhm.
Uh, all three characters get something to do on this mission, which is always nice to include for things
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
Um, like just and of course, yeah, you just have those sparkling character dynamics.
Yeah,
Uh,
which is Perez just absolutely excels at, and even more so, like we said, now that he's strictly a writer on the book. Yeah, he just really nails these character moments here.
um,
We save Edda, we stop the Coons. It's very nice.
but
And
there's this moment where Guy thinks that Diana may have died, right? Because there's
mhm.
a ship goes down in flames into the ocean, and Edda and Guy are looking on, and Guy Gardner, he was just like, uh, you know, I guess I was wrong about that cupcake. After all that I said about her, she actually grew for us. If only she knew that my ring would have protected me automatic. And Diana's just alive, poking him on the back, and it's these lovely moments of, hey, guy's not terrible after all, but he's never going to show it to anyone who,
Yep.
and that is, it's a delight.
Yeah, it's
Um,
great. Yeah,
and
so we get this great little like well, Diana reunites with Edda. We get these great little scenes between Diana and Jean towards the end here. I don't know. Jean Jones is another character that I love so much. And again, I just want you to watch more Justice League so that you can see more of why I love him so much.
yes,
Yeah,
uh,
again, just great character interactions, and that's where we sort of end off our first issue of the tie-ins. Um, yeah, we go into Wonder Woman number 26. With a cover that does kind of give the whole game away with what this issue is doing. Um, but it's still a cool issue nonetheless. And I know you actually latched onto this issue a lot more than I thought you would, because I guess well, yeah, because like you hadn't realized, or you didn't really like know Captain Atom very well up to this
yeah, but
point.
he kept popping
Um,
up. Like he popped up in Suicide Squad. He
mhm.
popped up in the film adaptation of Flashpoint.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, who the fuck is this guy? And now we get an issue like properly dedicated to him and his relationship with Steve Trevor here too. Um, and it's really cool to see. So yeah, getting into this one, this is the Immortal Storm, and yeah. Once again, some editor's notes telling us we just tied into Invasion, but again, you don't feel like you're missing much, and anything that
Yes.
you are missing is mostly told through thought bubbles and dialogue here and narration, and it's all done very succinctly, I think.
Yes. Part of me also wonders if Invasion was like a smaller event.
It was. It was only like 3 issues, I think.
Okay, because I'm like, this is all tying to Invasion number two, which with in sort of the modern event sphere, like
Yeah.
big events are at least six, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, especially we'll consider our last big event that Wonder Woman tied into, which was Millennium, which was 8 main issues
yeah,
of the
which is
tie-ins.
big, like bigger events. But I think
This would have
maybe
been, considering the amount of issues that were in between, this would have been next year's like big summer event. So like Millennium would have been the last one. This is the next big summer event, so which is Invasion.
yeah. Except this
Yeah.
was published in winter,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
well, you always call them like summer events no matter when they publish, because DC does at least one big summer event every year, and they've become more centralized to directly summer in recent years. But
That is well,
yeah,
that's fascinating because I was also thinking like, in the DC universe at this time, Death in the Family is being published, like right
yeah,
around
exactly.
this,
Yep.
uh, which is just an interesting note, especially because like it's only the JLI and Captain
Yeah.
Atom. It's not.
Mhm.
There's no Superman. There's no Batman. Um, and of course, it being tying into Invasion number two, you think, okay, that's much smaller than something so big
Like
uh,
Millennium, yeah.
like Millennium.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so Diana goes back to where is she going here? uh
uh,
Oh,
is
that's right. Oh, that's right. Because last time on Wonder Woman, this is what happens when you take multiple months off of reading Wonder Woman.
yeah. Well, we're
Uh,
back in Boston, and at this point we are now in the immediate aftermath of where Volume 2 left off.
yeah,
Um,
which was just Hermes being a dick, and as always, Hermes not realizing that he's being a massive dick.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, just nice to see here. We see Herbie sort of reflecting on things, reflecting on Phobos here, and Phobos or Phobos.
Uh, Technically both. One's the British way, one's the American way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I defaulted to the Doctor Who way, so probably
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I find myself slipping between both because of being a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also there's that one Eighth Doctor audio called Phobos.
Yeah, there's also one called Deimos, Phobos' brother.
That's true. That's true. Don't they call it Deimos though in the audio?
Deimos, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, going on. We see Diana and Edda sort of just regrouping here. They go and meet with Captain Adam, who said, unlike last time where Edda went missing, this time Steve Trevor is missing, and you have to go
Yes.
rescue him. Both these issues are rescue missions, but it's still nice to see. Just
They
great way
also,
to.
oddly enough, for rescue missions, they both feel very, very distinct.
They do, yeah. Oh, yeah. This certainly is not the same type of rescue mission that last issue was. Whereas that was, like go and beat up all the bad guys and get Ed out of there. This is more. This is like legitimately like we might be walking directly into a trap, and it should just be Diana and Captain Adam going into there, because it could be really dangerous. So
Yeah.
it's nice.
Um,
Also we get an Amanda Waller cameo here, which is nice.
yes, I was so happy just to see Waller for some reason. Like I knew she wasn't really going to contribute. Like
Mm,
I don't want to say she doesn't contribute because she does, but it's background work for stuff the larger event is clearly doing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, but it also makes me kind of want to see how Perez would characterize like an Amanda Waller focus
Mm,
issue.
yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
Mhm.
Um,
But I mean, at the time, I mean, like Ostrander just had a complete capital on the character, so
for
yeah.
good reason. For
Oh
good
yeah,
reason.
yeah. He's perfect. Yeah,
She was
um,
his baby.
yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Uh,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So Diana and Adam go out there. Meanwhile, Hermes tries to get all Boston to obey him. It does not go well. He just wants them to be grateful that he saved them all, and he really didn't.
And he's also just very much being humbled by the people of Boston.
Mhm.
With
And
this,
then we get a tease of a shadowy figure watching Hermes. And Jacob, I know you must have been excited about this because
uh,
I know how much you love this guy.
look, I was like, no, it can't. I was like, hey, that looks like the creeper.
I love it. Oh my god, it's so good. Um, so funny. Meanwhile, we have the shapeshifting Durlands who are watching, who have Steve Trevor captive. Um, I kind of like that you don't ever like see like their full designs, like they're just constantly covered in shadow with these like green tentacles coming out of their
I
like
have to make a
purple
specific
cloaks.
Doctor Who reference with this. It looks like they look like one of the alien delegates from Mission to the Unknown and Dalek's Master Plan.
They
Like,
absolutely do.
like
Yeah.
they look like Zephon, right? I think
Yeah. Yeah.
Zephon's the one, right? That Hartnell dresses up as.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep, that's right.
It's been a while
um,
since I've engaged with
yeah,
Master
that's right.
Plan.
Yeah, yeah, because I whenever I actually honestly more remember that from the Fourth Doctor adventures that Zephon's son Zephon features in.
Yes.
Oh my god. Some things just I don't know. Some things I will never forget about Doctor Who.
Also, there's just the design in general is just a good design of these
Yeah,
creatures.
it's
Like
cool. Yeah.
not seeing creating faceless enemies is a difficult task to do.
Mhm.
Because sometimes they can become a bit problematic in terms of you lose sympathy,
Mhm.
but sometimes that works really well if you really
Yeah,
want like an
but
even.
sometimes in this case they're just cheesy horror movie
Yeah,
monsters, and it's just that's all they need to be, you know.
yeah,
Because
and
all you're doing here is a shape shifting, body snatcher story, and it's fun. Um, But yeah, so meanwhile, back in Boston, the Creeper arrives, and George Perez just has the time of his life writing this guy.
Oh, it is so good. Like the jokes come a mile a minute.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, like every single panel that the Creeper pops up in, he's saying some weird one-liner against Hermes, and it's really really fun. I don't know. This is a great fight between the two of them. The whole time Creeper's fucking with Hermes. Also, this whole time Julia and Vanessa are watching all this being broadcast on live TV. Um, and I don't know.
Also, okay, there's
Good
this
events.
moment where Julia's like, Vanessa asks Julia, "Mom, who is that creeper character?" That's a little hard to explain, baby. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think the creeper can best be summed up as Jack Kirby bullshit. But like,
Yep.
as always, very good Jack Kirby bullshit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, Meanwhile, Wonder Woman and Captain Atom are still looking for Steve Trevor. They,
I love their dynamic throughout all of this. Like,
yeah, yep.
especially when
Um,
they're on their own,
mhm,
like it almost feels like Diana is one of the few people who's treating Captain Atom like a human being.
yeah.
Like,
Also, there's this
uh,
cool inner struggle in Captain Atom that he knows Steve Trevor in his alter ego, and Steve doesn't know that he is Captain Atom, and Adam feels like he could have like avoided all this if Steve knew the truth about him. So it's cool. I don't know. I just like that inner monologue happening as this whole sequence is going on. Um,
yeah.
but
Um,
but as of course they do in a shape shifting body snatcher story, Diana and Cameron decide to split up, and
which is, I'm going to assume they don't necessarily know about the shape shifting bits
don't
necessarily.
they do they ever establish that they don't know that they're shapeshifters?
I don't know if they establish either way, is the thing. I'm going
Mm.
to choose to believe that they don't know.
It could also be that they do know, and we just wanted to do a fun little story at the end of this issue where they end
Yes.
up fighting each other's fake doubles. Like that's it. That's all it is. Because Diana ends up fighting a shapeshifted Derlin as Captain Atom, and Captain ends up doing the same to a fake Wonder Woman, and it's all it is. It's fun. It's a nice little scene. Also a very fast climax because it all happens in like the last like 5 pages of the issue. Um, it's after they fight off both of them. They rescue Steve. Um, Captain Atom gets out of there, and I don't know, just a nice little wrap up to that. As
And then we go back to Boston.
back to Boston.
Back to
Um,
Boston.
as as the fight between Hermes and Creeper comes to a head, Hermes has had enough of this mere mortal, and Wonder Woman comes in to stop all this. She ties up Creeper, and who's still spouting one-liners even as he's tied up. Um, and and there's this moment between Hermes and Diana that I really enjoy, where just Hermes, as always, is just trying to paint himself as the hero of this story. And even Diana's like, like she's like, what is even going on here? Like, what are you trying to say? And Hermes purposefully omits certain aspects of what he actually did in Boston up to this point. And again, I don't know. I just find the way Perez writes Hermes' flaws really interesting.
Well, it's very much Hermes is a god. Like,
Mm-hmm.
gods generally think they are above mortals. We
Yeah.
are infallible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, one of the big point of Greek mythology is that the gods are fallible because it's a pantheon with each god having their own sort of domain. Um, and having it's really seeding this issue really like these final moments really do start to seed subtly where
Mm-hmm.
Hermes is going to be going.
Yeah.
Because in I didn't think I didn't expect to actually really like Hermes's plot. Um, but then I did and I believe it's the next issue that did um, that possibly the one after. Uh, no, it's this next issue that really started to get me on Hermes' side. That he's
Mm-hmm.
really trying, and he has the potential to grow there, which we'll
Yeah.
get to in Wonder Woman number 27.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So this is from Date and Tonight, and we're back on Themyscira. just right away, I do want to mention I find some of the language barrier like choices here really interesting in that some of them don't really make sense. Because there are just certain times when some of the Amazons completely understand what Steve and Edda are saying, and other times when Steve and Edda totally understand what the Amazons are saying, and it just doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Well, they do mention that certain Themyscirans do know English
yeah, but
and do
like
speak in English.
yeah, but
Um,
specifically in like Hippolyta's case, like who understands at certain points, like she's shown to struggle with the language towards the end of the issue, and it's
yes.
like it's just certain things. Just I don't know. I think we should just drop the whole language barrier conceit that Perez was going for here at this point, and just kind of do the thing that he did with Diana early on in the whole run, where he was just like Diana just very quickly learned the language.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But yeah, one thing. This is Steve Trevor awake and alive on Themyscira. Like,
Mhm.
and getting to interact, I think is interesting. Partially because it shows Perez is trying to show the Amazons growing as a people as the cultural exchange happens and being
Mhm.
open to men coming into Paradise Island and not necessarily ruining Paradise, but also them being fairly careful to only bring on certain very trustworthy men who have proven themselves, like Steve Trevor.
Yeah.
But also what this visit does for Steve's character. Because jumping ahead way, like quite a bit, he visits the statue of his mother.
Mhm.
Um, and seeing that from Steve's perspective is fascinating, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, because his mother was, a great hero, an analog for the Golden Age Wonder Woman, at least in Perez's mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, um, there is something, there's just something so beautiful about that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's Perez. It's really really done. I love all these interactions with the Amazons and Steve. It
Mhm.
feels like a
I also
like a
like that.
family.
I also like that there's some dissent amongst the other Amazons too. Like not all of them like that Steve is being allowed there. Um, and Diana has to sort of like just be
A
the
mediator.
yeah, she has to be the mediator between
She
like the
has
two
to be the
sides there.
ambassador that her character kind of generally is portrayed as.
Yeah.
But in a very informal way. Like it's creating a relationship with one person and not like a whole nation. It's
Yeah.
with Steve Trevor.
Yeah.
Um, so
But meanwhile,
okay,
we got
okay.
okay. I love this so much. I love
I
this so
I
much.
love this plot probably more than I should.
Right?
Like
It's so deserved. It's so deserved.
this this
We catch
plot
back
is
up.
cliche, but like
We
Vanessa's
catch.
gotten
Oh come on.
emotionally like torn apart in the last couple of volumes, so her
Yeah.
getting payback is worth it.
We catch back up with that asshole Barry, who is just like using Vanessa to like get to know Wonder Woman way back when, and he's with this girl Lucy, and he's like hitting on her, and she's like, oh okay, well let's not do this out here, like underneath the bleachers, let's go into the locker rooms, in the
Maybe
boys
the
locker room.
boys' locker rooms.
Yeah,
Which okay, this feels almost like a John Hughes movie,
it
just a
does. It
little bit.
totally does. It's a John
Like,
Hughes movie.
uh,
Yeah, they walk into here. Lucy slips away. Barry gets dunked in like blue paint. It looks like.
yeah, I think it's just blue paint. I don't
Yeah,
know where they got the blue paint, but like, and Vanessa is just so like it's like all these girls and one of the guys that Barry's kind of just fucked around with, and
yeah.
then like
Well, no,
just
because Barry turns on the other guy afterwards. He's like, "There's no way they could have gotten in here without you helping them." And so he goes after him. He slips and falls on his ass, and it's just it feels so deserved. Cause fuck this kid.
yeah, Barry sucks. Barry sucks.
He does.
He
He's the worst.
um
I love it. Meanwhile, there's an attack. There are these mysterious assassin type characters that are going after these military vans.
In
Um,
Southern California.
yeah,
Uh,
they kill one of the drivers there, or was it both of them? I don't know.
I believe it's both of them, and they
Yeah, the idea
steal.
is that like he wasn't supposed to. They weren't. No, we were supposed to die, so it's not draw suspicion. But they do it anyway, and they steal these things out of the back of this van, and we'll catch back up
And
with
this
that
is
later.
and this is like the first seeds of this massive story arc that Perez weaves so well because it
Yeah.
shifts.
Oh, it's
This is
done
a story
so
arc that's
well.
going to shift its gears
I think
on a
also at some point,
dime.
I forget exactly where in all the Themyscira scenes, but I think we do mention the second golden girdle of Gaia at some point,
Yes,
don't we?
we're seeing.
Just as that little hint, just to remind the audience of that, just quickly. They don't
Yeah,
draw too much attention to it, but it's nice to have there. Because again, this is really the arc where like Perez is really starting to like tie every single plot thread that he's written so far together, and it's really great to see. Um,
and,
Meanwhile, we
and-
go back to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, and then because here we have the scene with Steve at the statue of his mother,
Hmm.
and it's this tiny panel in the bottom right corner, not the full bottom, the one right above it, that you see just this passion on Steve's face,
Hmm.
that Marion draws so well. That's
Yeah.
also just lit really well with the
Yeah,
colors.
it's not really like natural colors, but I think that makes it all the more effective.
Yeah, Augustin Moss did the covers. Excuse me. No, he's the letter. Carl Gafford is the colorist on this one.
Mhm.
Who I think Gafford has colored some of this run and some other stuff we may have covered. The name sounds at least a little familiar.
I believe so.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Um,
it's a really powerful small image just slipped there.
Speaking of
Um,
also just really powerful moments, the bit where Steve walks out afterwards and does the little wrist pose
yeah,
thing.
our Themysciran salute.
Yeah, it is like said that there's like no language barrier needed there. Like everyone understands what is being said there, and Hippolyta does it back, and it's this nice moment of connection between the two of them. I love it. Oh, it's so good. Perez is so good. Anyway, um, back in back in Boston.
We have
Vanessa and
Julia,
Julia.
and I love Julia's sort of motherliness of like being annoyed at Vanessa for good reason because like she did a cruel thing. He deserved it, but it
Yeah,
was still
yeah, but Vanessa's also like, yeah, but Barry must have looked pretty funny there. You know? Just really funny. I don't know. Just Julia's just such a great character.
it's like I have to be angry because I'm your mother, but I'm also glad that you were able to stand up for yourself to a truly awful bully.
Mhm.
And then it's just into this scene when they get home of moving trucks coming in to try to deliver their new furniture. Like you know uh you gotta pay the minimum, but like we didn't realize you were hiring outside help. And
Mhm. We find out that it's Hermes,
Hermes,
and Hermes has put literally everything back where it was supposed to be, and and again, just like it's a kind gesture, but there's just that undertone of just Hermes feeling like he deserves something for doing such a kind thing for these mere
yeah,
mortals, you know.
and,
Um,
but it feels like it's evolved slightly from the last season. That he's slowly understanding humanity and mortals, like
mhm.
not entirely. And I'm
No,
glad that
because Hermes still has a long way to go, even by the end of this volume.
And I am so
Um,
glad that it's still a long way to go by the end of this volume because I think
yeah, yeah,
a lesser writer would have really rushed that,
yeah.
and tried to have made it
Um,
just one story arc and not this ongoing character development.
Yeah.
Um,
But meanwhile, we catch back up with these assassin mercenary guys who bring these cases that they stole to one Barbara Minerva and Kuma, who are great to see again. First off, just I don't know, I love that they're even here. And Kuma, we'll talk more about later, but Kuma is back, and I'm sure that it was met with an immediate eye rolling from you, as it was me when I first read this.
yeah, it was a little. I
Um,
was very nervous, but at least at this, I hadn't gotten to this point. Because I think you had read a couple issues further than I had initially, and
in
you're
my
like,
reread, yeah,
yeah, and you're like,
and,
hey, it's like because I saw the back cover. Obviously, it meant the cheetah was going to be back because of
mhm.
the back cover of the volume.
Yeah, yeah. But I
We
let you
said,
know ahead of time. I was like, hey, just so you know, Kuma's back, but also like
Perez does an interesting stuff with him.
Yeah. I mean, there's still the potentially offensive phonetic spelling of the accent.
There
And
is still the phonetic spelling of the accent, and the fact that his religion and mythology is a bit mixed up in the fact that it's not a real religion and mythology from Africa, and it feels a
I
little
mean,
out of place.
yeah, but also I don't think it needs to be because
Yes,
you're rooting it in the cheetah. Like that's you're
yes,
just writing a comic book
it's
character.
understandable.
Yeah. But I would say more on that later. We'll really take a deep dive into Kuma when we do that, his big issue.
Yes.
Um,
Um,
yeah, so we find that the things that were stolen for Barbara were two Kund bodies.
from
That
the
are still,
invasion.
yeah, from the invasion. They're still alive, it seems, and they've been captured. And Barbara offers them revenge, and we'll catch back up with that in a little bit. Meanwhile, we also see that while Hermes has put everything back into place for Julia and Vanessa, he has added one small thing, and that is a very big, impressive entertainment center for Vanessa's room.
Including a very nice for the time television.
Mhm.
Looks like a very state of the art VHS player,
Yep.
and a very nice sound system for vinyl and I think cassettes.
Yeah. Which
Like,
like I don't know. Again, kind gesture, but again, just Hermes just feels like he's just overcorrecting and feels
but
like he deserves something.
like, what's also interesting,
Because Hermes knows that Julia doesn't like him, so all
yeah,
he's trying to do is earn her favor.
but he also like I love this line of dialogue. I'm afraid I may have been a little extravagant in one respect. Please don't be angry. Your lovely daughter so wanted that video entertainment center. It's only a small gift, but if you wish me to remove it, the fact that he offers to remove it,
That's
like
true. Yeah, I
that is
do like
something that
that.
the Hermes of a couple issues ago definitely wouldn't do. He'd be like,
Yeah,
you dare, to disrespect the gift of
yeah,
a
I do such a
god?
kind thing for you. Yeah, it's yeah. There is a noticeable change there.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Diana takes Steve and Etta out of Themyscira, and as she re-enters Man's world, they are attacked by the Coons taken by Barbara. Um, they're attacked. There's this nice little fight scene between all of them,
Some
and
great action.
yeah,
You really get to see Marinin's art shine with the action. Uh,
hmm
uh, I don't think he does quite as well as Perez did, but it's still very good.
yeah,
Uh,
oh, definitely, and still very fitting for the run, I would say.
yes.
But yeah, they're the Coons are very easily defeated because it's Wonder Woman.
Well, they are flown away and then catapulted back down as missiles, and they
Mhm.
explode.
Yes,
This is a thing that happens, and
yes.
like I should be like, that's dumb, but Perez sells it so well.
Yeah. But as Wonder Woman ties up one of the Coons, and she is distracted by this other Coon attacking Steve and Etta, she leaves the lasso behind that she tied up the one Coon with, and the Coon is taken by Kuma, and they are now in possession of the lasso, and this once again is just pushing forward the main plot of this massive arc that Perez is working at. We get a nice little tease of the cheetah here. I love the way that Marinin draws those silhouettes there on the bottom. I think it's so cool. Um, but Wonder Woman realizes that her lasso is now missing. That is where we end the issue, and it's wonderful.
It's also such a
Lack of a better
great
term.
ending of an issue that isn't ending on like an action cliffhanger. It's oh, that's where our story's going.
Hmm.
That's dangerous.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But we then go into Wonder Woman at number 28 now. Eight,
yes,
yeah.
28.
Yeah,
Um,
and I love this cover. Just the bloody sword with Diana's reflection on it and the cheetah print behind it. It's just so cool. I really, really love that.
yes.
Um, yeah,
Uh,
we open on Kuma though, and
this is
the
where he starts to get some actual characterization.
mhm.
Um,
Most of this opening sequence is centered around this really atmospheric death of the remaining mercenaries that fucked up the job of getting the Kun bodies. Um, and
and
they die by the end of this like big sequence, and it's paired alongside these really threatening drawings of Kuma as the cheetah like slowly stalks these mercenaries and kills them by the end of it all, and Marinin just absolutely crushes these first 4 pages. It's a really
yeah.
tense sequence.
Um, it also so the cheetah herself is only seen in full in one panel.
Mm-hmm. And
But to
even then,
me,
it's still pretty shadowed.
yeah, but there's still this way that they really communicate this idea that Barbara Minerva has become somehow more savage since the
Mm.
last time we saw her in the
Yeah,
run,
definitely.
and that losing herself to the cheetah is gonna be a main theme of this arc,
Yeah,
which I think is really interesting.
yeah.
Um, and we have like when we actually can catch up with Diana, she has gone to Hermes for help to try to contact the goddess Hestia, who we don't see, doesn't actually get an answer from. The gods aren't answering Diana mainly because this is her responsibility. She's not in trouble for losing the lasso, but she is going to be the one responsible for getting it back, which I think is a very interesting note on the way the gods treat Diana, that they trust her enough to rectify what is her responsibility, but wasn't really a mistake. Like it wasn't a
Yeah.
mistake to try to use the lasso to lasso up a villain, and then it just got stolen in genuine chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Like there isn't some angsty drama about Diana losing the lasso. It's just she just needs to find it.
Yeah.
Um,
Meanwhile, back in Boston, we are catching up with two actually familiar faces from some previous issues. Inspector Indelicato and oh, what's the other one's name? Uh
Sans, I believe.
I believe, yeah, yep. So yeah, oh, Shans, that's there, yeah. Yeah, we catch up with the two of them again. They're yeah, investigating these deaths, I believe. Um,
Uh,
and uh, and also looking into Barbara Minerva, who is who's back in town, it seems. Um,
well,
who's
is
still
sort of wanted because though she is believed to still be in England at the time.
that's
Um,
right, okay, yeah,
she is not. Also, this is taking place at the press agency that was once run by one Mindy Mayer.
yeah.
Um, uh, Again, a lesser writer would have forgotten about the death of Mindy Mayer, but like,
I
even,
love. I don't want to say too much about where the run is going. After this volume, because we'll be covering a bit more for a while. But Mindy Mayer's influence is still felt for a very long time after her death from Volume Two.
I think that's just
It's
really
so smart.
important.
It's such great storytelling. Like just, I I know I still think back to that like first episode of Wonder Woman we did when I was like, oh my god, I love Mindy so much, and I don't think you quite got
I
it
didn't quite get it
like
for
why I
good
loved her
reason.
so much. But like yeah, like it just it's I'm glad you're understanding it now, especially like after her death, just how important she still is. Even just in
Yes.
small things like this, like it's just the fact that we're focusing on still her publishing agency. Just really important stuff. Um, anyway, but yeah, so Diana.
We hatch a plan with Diana. I love Julia's. So this is basically the last. Well, not entirely the last, but this is the last we'll see of Julia for a while.
Mhm.
Um, and for fairly good reason. This is very much becoming a. This is very much meant to focus on Diana as a person, specifically her relationship with the cheetah and other things that pop up. And her heritage in a way. Um,
Mhm.
but I love that Julia's there. All of her friends are there for support.
Yeah,
Even Hermes is there for support, even if he's
yeah,
not.
of all people, yeah. But yeah, so Diana is going to go to London to go look for Barbara Minerva and find out what's
Uh,
going on with all that.
but
Um,
is using it under this idea of she's just going to be, spending some time in England, you
as
know.
like Wonder Woman, as like Wonder Woman takes a vacation to the UK. You know, like that's how it's like portrayed in these like newspapers that we see.
She's
Um,
okay. I'm guessing Perez didn't get the permission to use the likeness of print of the royal family because one of the headlines is like, "Can London handle two princess dies?"
oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um, which would be interesting to see Perez's take on the British royal family.
yeah,
Uh, I'm glad it didn't happen.
yeah,
In a
yeah.
way, uh,
But
but it's
anyway,
also
yeah. So Kuma finds out that Diana is here, and that he's planning something here. Um, we see Hermes, Julia, Steven, and Vanessa just sort of just regrouping. Just I think is this like our last scene with them until like we have that big recap issue.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah.
At least I
Um,
believe so. But it's also it's one good final character note for Hermes, where Hermes has to understand why, as a god, he can't just interfere.
yeah.
Um,
Um, but
that
I love the little sequence then with Diana and the cabbie. Just a fun little dialogue between the two of them. Also, just a random tie-in to what is Justice League Europe #1, apparently.
yeah, I have a feeling that like Perez may have called whoever was writing Justice League Europe and was like, "Can you write in some sort of Wonder Woman cameo?" Um, for one of the
Also, it could
for
have been a big like like oh, it could be like a way to sell because it's advertising Justice League Europe #1,
one.
so it could be like a
So
way to like sell that first issue.
very possibly,
Yeah.
which just really helps guide the story in the book itself
Mhm.
in a really nice way.
Yeah.
Um, but
But Diana goes to see Kuma then at Dr. Barbara Minerva's house. Barbara is not there at the time, and Kuma is very obviously trying to poison Diana. He keeps offering this tea. Um,
and so I was like, I wasn't expecting a reverse Princess Bride situation, but we kind of get a reverse Princess Bride situation.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I like that the fact that he's being so obvious about poisoning her is used as a part of the plot here. By the time she drinks it, and I know spoilers for the next couple issues, like Diana is faking this this
Paralysis.
paralysis from the poison tea, just so she could find out what Barbara and Kuma actually want with her, and what's going on with all that. Just a cool aspect of the story, which doesn't get revealed for quite a few issues actually, which I find really
Quite a
interesting.
while because yeah, and
Or
this
no,
is
it's like very end of next issue, isn't it?
yeah,
Because
but that's
it's still a long time from now.
still a decent chunk of the story because the rest of this issue we then take a diversion to essentially a flashback in-depth origin story for Barbara Minerva as the cheetah. And I love how ruthless the character is before
Oh,
she
this
even like
I have the what's really interesting. I think I picture Barbara Minerva in these flashbacks with a very different voice than I picture Barbara Minerva in the present day. Her voice.
I picture her voice much older in the present day.
Well,
Uh
yeah, true, but I'm not even sure like exactly what kind of voice I imagined for her in the flashbacks, but it's very different from my present day voice in my head. I don't know.
so it might have been because I was just watching The Great Muppet Caper recently. In the flashback, I was picturing Diana Rigg,
Okay,
like
I could understand that.
like young Diana Rigg,
Yeah.
but in the present day, older, coarser, more savage almost, but not like a specific actress's voice. Um,
Mhm.
um, you know what? Maybe an older Honor Blackman,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Oh yeah,
in a
definitely.
way.
But anyway, we get into these flashbacks. We see she's on this expedition with these other people, um, and they're like investigating this tribe. They're ambushed by them. This is like the tribe of the cheetah. Um, and most of Barbara's like expedition crew are like killed by these people. Barbara and this one guy escape. I forget what this guy's name is actually.
Dr.
Uh,
Levins.
that's it, Dr. Levins, who also just has a really funny, just stiff upper lip British voice in my head, just very dry, very nervous about everything. um, anyway, but yes, they both escape. They jump into this river. Um, and first of all, it's important to note that this entire story is told by Kuma. And once again, all this narration is done in that phonetic spelling.
Yeah.
And it's it would be a problem if the story wasn't so fucking good.
Perez, yeah, Perez. Well, Perez has given Kuma more characterization than his previous appearances, where he was just kind of almost pigeonholed into a stereotypical African servant. which
Yeah.
was the issue.
Whereas this, like, I feel like Kuma's a genuine character.
He has his inner life. He has his own motivations. Those
Yeah.
motivations are
Yeah.
in service of a god.
Yeah.
And I think that's
We
it's not perfect, but it makes it much more interesting and much easier to at least start to look past the phonetic narration.
mhm.
Um,
Barbara and Levin's like see this like sacrifice going on, and my God, first off, it's graphic. Like it is surprisingly graphic for a Comics Code Authority approved issue of Wonder Woman in the late '80s.
in the late 80s.
You know, like
Yeah.
it's really I don't know. I was just shocked at the amount of gore in this. Not I mean, not necessarily gore, but just I mean blood, just
Blood, a lot
violence,
of blood.
lot of blood. Yeah, just
Um,
and most of it is implied, but done in a surprisingly more graphic way than I think if it wasn't implied.
and
Um,
what I find interesting about this whole sacrifice sequence is there's a trope about sacrifices like this, um, where it's sort of portrayed as a bad thing, yet the tribe itself isn't portrayed as like ignorant or monsters.
mhm.
Probably because they are serving a god that definitely exists and definitely grants power. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and that makes it just
Um,
a bit more nuanced than the simple trope. I know, like, one big pop culture example of the trope is, um, at least that I have experienced when I've done my own reading on the trope, despite not having seen this film, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
you've not seen
Um,
oh that's right, you haven't seen
I've
Temple
not
of
seen
Doom.
Temple of Doom.
Watch Temple of Doom, you fucker! Oh my God.
I haven't even seen Raiders.
This episode of Wonder Woman is not the Joey mispronounces Greek names and Jacob corrects him podcast. This is the Joey yells at Jacob to watch more shit podcast.
Watch. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working
Yeah,
on it.
fucking use that letterbox for good things. um,
Um,
but no, so they sacrifice this person. They make this like potion to be given to their cat god that is like this withered old lady that they're meant to feed this sort of potion to.
who was
Um,
sort of given her life to the spirits and the spirit of the cheetah. That
this this potion is like shot and destroyed, and the withered old lady is killed by this rival tribe that has their hands on firearms.
heavily implied to be firearms sold by the government of the United States. Just a
Mhm.
reminder, this is published in 1989.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, just again another surprisingly violent sequence, but very good.
And Barbara Minerva is interfering mainly so she can take it for herself.
Yeah, like Kuma takes the old lady's body, and Barbara like pushes Kuma out of the way so that he doesn't die. And we end the issue in this flashback sequence of her like threatening Kuma, and like he knows at this point like exactly what she wants from him. And this goes into our next issue, Wonder Woman 29, with a beautiful cover of
It's
this.
a dark, surreal. It's not gory, but it very much like the Reds suggest gore.
They suggest gore, they suggest blood. Cheetah is hidden in these like really red and dark orange colors of leaves and branches, with a passed out Diana right in front of her. It's so good. I love the way that the look of the cheetah is built up in this whole story. It's fantastic. But we open
Yes.
this issue in a very different place. Oh, first off, this is the issue I was talking about earlier. This is my favorite issue of the whole story. I love this one. But we open on a very different scene from where we left off, which is more just teasing what the second half of this big story is really going for. We see that these they're Egyptian, Egyptian, I guess, shipmates are seeing this wrecked ship, or what is it? What are they looking at?
It is. Um, it's a vessel that they've been tracking
Oh, that okay, yeah. And they
that
go in
wasn't
there.
responding to signals, and they go in and they
Fi-
find
these
a
like
horror
bodies
show.
these bodies like strewn about and blood everywhere, again just surprisingly violent. I really can't get over that. It was way more graphic than I remember it being. But anyway, so we're back to present day, which immediately goes into a flashback where Diana's passed out, and we go into the flashback, same where we left off, um, and we get back into this. Kuma, first off, we see in the flashbacks is just very torn up over the fact that his goddess is dead, or at least the vessel that would have been for his goddess is dead.
Yes.
And Barbara just sort of immediately suggests, she's like, just take me instead. What would it take to still perform this ritual? We see that Barbara's like sort of just obsessed with this already,
She wants the power,
yeah,
and
that her lust for power is just really driving her in these moments.
and she's going to get it, and this is like essentially the birth of the cheetah as we know her. But it's told beautifully almost. I love how this issue's panels sort of give this image of almost an old-timey photograph in places.
Yeah. They could also kind of look like ripped on the edges, almost like they were like the panels were like torn apart at times.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's all
Um,
it's these tiny little effects that really make it work.
I'd really love to know if those were like Perez decisions or Marin decisions. I don't know. I'd love to just know that somehow. But
yes.
anyway, yeah, so Kuma tells Barbara about how like the whole like ritual got started and how Kuma got involved in all this and what the actual cheetah cat goddess does for this tribe. Just really, really cool world building that Perez does here through all this dialogue and the narration here. And once again, just doing so much for Kuma as a character who really just was not much to speak on and was just downright offensive in the first volume. Just really speaks to the strengths of this character's background and what Perez is doing here to really improve on what he was lacking when we first met him.
Yes, and
Great stuff.
what's especially interesting is we because it's all building the first real appearance of the cheetah, in this very very striking image, and we go down an interesting route as to why Barbara Minerva has been losing her power and becoming crippled.
So we catch back up with Levins as we learn not long before that one would need a blood sacrifice in order to complete the ritual, and that she would have to make this sacrifice herself. She would have to kill this person. So Barbara finds Levins. She kills him almost immediately. Once again, in some surprisingly graphic, those silhouetted panels.
It's brutal, and there's like
she literally stabbed him in the back. like she throws his gun and he goes after it, and when he's reaching for it, like she stabs him in the back and kills him. And again, just even it's not portrayed that like Kuma is disturbed by this, but like Kuma just it completely understands her lust for power.
It's very much a thing that must be if he and his god is really to survive.
Yeah, and he's willing to go along with it for his god, and I love that. So we use Levins's blood for the ritual. We paint Barbara up. I love the way that these panels are done of just showing that initial transformation. She's fed the potion thing that they were going to give to the previous lady, and as so their tribe begins to catch up with Kuma, the ritual is completed. The cheetah is revealed in this horrifying, almost full-page panel, and it's so good. Oh my god, just it's such an effective image and effective story overall. The panel afterward on the next page immediately gets just drenched in this blood red as Cheetah just rips through all of these men from the other tribe. It's just it's so effective. I adore it.
And then
we learn the trick with all this is, unfortunately, and again, an aspect of the story that you really wouldn't expect to be there in the late 80s, but part of the ritual is that the person that is the vessel for the cat goddess has to be a virgin.
Has to be wed to this god of the vine. Which is it's interesting. So this is coming out in Uh, this is in This is like April May 1989.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, the Sandman has already been going for a decent amount of its run, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I think Perez is doing something very interesting here, mainly because I think it's meant to reflect the fact that Hermes can change, but this god of the vine cannot. Uh, Mainly because the god of
It's
the
an interesting
vine
point.
is a primal inhuman force, where Hermes is being portrayed as a more actual active force, which I think is interesting. Um, I also think it's interesting that Perez doesn't necessarily shame Barbara Minerva for not being a virgin. She's shamed for wanting power and being so ruthless and doing these awful things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a shame that, not being a virgin is what leads to the downfall.
I
Um,
mean,
but it,
again, like you're right in calling out that, like, yeah, the downfall of the cheetah and this goddess is that it is unwilling to change. And Kuma sounds, but like it's written as almost as if Kuma is sad in this moment. I love the way this dialogue is done. You see the original ceremony be calling for Kartaga, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Kartaga's bride to be a
it's
virgin.
not. Yeah, I believe so. It's not
Um,
an actual, like, as far as I
yeah,
know, god that like exists in a religion.
yeah. It
Um,
says for the bride to be a virgin, the madam be single. I did not know. Um, and just like it's not Kuma blaming himself, but just genuinely feeling bad for what this power that Barbara wanted is doing to her and why it's affecting her body so much. Um, just a really interesting moment. And as we finish up our story, Diana reveals that she was faking her paralysis the whole time. That her Amazon blood gives her an immunity to these poisons.
so it's almost a reverse Princess Bride
Yeah.
in the end.
And so Diana finds out where Barbara is going by looking at the plane ticket in Kuma's bag. Um, she leaves then and
We
goes
go
out
to Egypt.
go to Egypt, where she crashes into this. Or she's caught in this, like, I guess, like a sandstorm, pretty much.
Yeah, a
Um,
sandstorm.
and
Uh,
she crashes into this building. She finds
it's
these.
implied that the use of the lasso by Barbara Minerva is causing this sandstorm somehow. Uh,
Yeah.
and its power, or possibly the twist of the other tribe of Amazon.
Yeah, which we are about to meet here. Diana finds these two dead bodies. She looks at the markings on these bracelets. Um, and she is then shot at by Amazon-looking people who begin speaking a language that is very similar to
The
Themysciran,
Mascuran.
and but is also, what is it? It's Arabic, Ancient Greek, and Themysciran. It sounds like, according to Diana's inner monologue
Yes,
here.
which makes sense for a tribe that would be in the Middle East and Africa, as they are.
Yeah.
Arabic being perhaps the primary language of Egypt and much of the middle, or one of the primary languages of the Middle East, and of course
Yeah.
the Mascuran becoming ancient Greek,
Hmm.
becoming that.
Yeah. Going then to Wonder Woman number 30. Um, I always end up enjoying this half of the story way more than I always think I will. Because it's a really fascinating part of it, where we go into this other tribe of Amazons. These Amazons that are just sort of an offshoot of Amazons from Paradise Island. We get into the backstory more later, but I don't know, I just find that fascinating, just as an idea to begin with.
It,
Um,
it feels it feels like it's a plot line that could very much have become padding in a way. And Perez but it never feels like it's padded.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
like this is honestly, it's a big twist that redirects the story, and it's a twist that's subtly set up earlier in the with the mention of the second girdle, uh, uh, way earlier on. So, like, Perez was subtly sowing seeds of where the story was going to go, but how we got there is just such a fascinating little twist.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
And we get
Yeah.
a sense immediately that these Amazons are more savage,
Well,
and
first off, they
more.
have firearms, unlike regular Amazons. Um, uh, they are speaking this other language that Diana really doesn't understand. They're calling her this word Ariadna, I believe
Yeah,
that's how you pronounce it.
Ariadna, which I picked up on immediately
Mm-hmm.
as very close to a figure from Greek mythology, Ariadne, who
Which does
figures
get a direct call out
direct
later.
call out. Yeah, so I had some ideas on what the term might mean, but not
Mm.
quite. I find it actually interesting in the way how Perez gets to that term, um, which is fairly interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
But Diana is attacked. There's this fight that breaks out between the two of them until this group of Amazons, their queen comes out. I am blanking on her name at the moment. Mm,
uh,
nope, I got nothing.
Queen Anna hint.
That's it, Anahit. Anahit, yeah.
Anna
Um,
hint. I'm not
yeah.
sure because this is also we're mixing in Arabic into some of
Mhm.
these names, which is
Yeah.
not a language I'm familiar with at all. So,
Yeah. No, Jacob, go ahead. Go ahead. Now you get to play the dumbass.
except you're not familiar with the language either, so you can't play the smartass.
But I'm gonna have you pronounce all the names first now, so that I can seem like less of a dumbass.
I see how that is.
This is
Uh,
revenge. But no, so Diana fights off all these other Amazons. The queen comes out and presumably like sprays like this. I don't know what is it. Is it like a gas from her mouth or whatever that like
it
knocks Diana
is.
out?
It is like a poisonous gas implied to be like diluted from like a cobra.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So Diana is, essentially,
She's
you know,
knocked out. But yeah, so we then cut to this seemingly random little scene where there's just this guy complaining at a hotel that Kuma is not running. Is he helping out at? I don't know. It's a weird little scene.
that he's helping out. It feels like an inverted version of the film Casablanca, like a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. Um, but like yeah, Kuma like kicks this guy out, like literally throws him out on his ass, and goes to see Barbara then, who's withering away on a bed, um, asking for help. We then go back to Diana, who wakes up in this basement with these other really are these
Chris,
guys all dead here, or are they just slowly dying? I'm assuming the latter.
they're either slowly dying or dead. It's not again not entirely clear, but it's a horrific image.
Mm.
Um,
Diana also
and,
says that thinks to herself that she can't speak. She doesn't know what the queen did to her. Um, and
and
she is
this figure in shadow says, only a true Wonder Woman could have survived the kiss of the Cobra. And this is, um,
the high priestess
yeah,
Kadesha.
Kadesha Banu, or
Yeah,
yeah,
Banny. I
um,
don't
yeah, High
know.
Priestess, Master Methodologist, and Supreme Alchemist of all Bana Migdal.
Hmm,
Um, which I believe, I'm guessing, isn't what Bana Migdal? These characters eventually keep their way in continuity, right?
I believe so.
Um,
But yeah, so she's met by this high priestess, um, who throws a rock at her.
well, because the Cobra venom didn't work. Because that was Cobra venom that was
Yeah,
spit in her face.
and it was meant to kill her, and it didn't. So um, we see that
And she, like, this alchemist knows that Diana isn't guilty of of the sacrilege that she's been accused of, but the
mhm,
queen already made a final verdict, so she has to die.
yeah.
uh, and we find that these Amazons have been working with gunrunners,
Mhm.
um, which is so fascinatingly different.
Yeah.
Obviously, because these Amazons have been surviving in man's world. Um,
Mhm.
and that's sort of what's hardened them. They don't have Themyscira. They don't have their paradise Garden of Eden island, which is peaceful and not invaded until Steve Trevor comes along.
Yeah.
Um,
Meanwhile, back in that hotel, Kuma's still looking after Barbara. We find out that what Barbara did recently, which is after she stole the lasso, she killed those other Amazons that Diana found in the temple earlier, um, and she found herself slowly weakening. Um, she started bleeding from her neck. Is that right? Look,
well,
looks that way at least.
she also, yeah, she's started bleeding.
Or
The
or or,
wi-
or, is- or is she, I guess, vomiting that
Vomiting.
blood? Yeah. Um,
It's quite interesting because the lasso itself has basically been controlling her.
yeah.
Um, Very much implied to be because of her, sort of impurities. It's the lasso of truth, and Barbara Minerva is not a truthful person.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think it also implies that wearing the lasso around her sort of neck and shoulders like that has injured her in at least her human form partially.
Hmm.
From it's really really interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, Meanwhile, we begin to catch up with this war going on between these Amazons and this Egyptian militia. It seems.
Militia
Um,
is sort of a terrorist cell. Remember, this is 1989, so
yeah. Yeah.
the action in the Middle East was ramping up and becoming very modern. Once
Hmm.
again, due to mainly American and some Soviet interference, um, which is again fascinating because Perez Perez
Towards the end of the story, like Perez says some shit about America.
yeah, he's not
Yeah.
kind to,
No, no, it's
and
it's pretty
rightfully
great.
so, rightfully
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, we get this fight between the two of them, those two factions, and afterwards, the High Priestess goes to check up on Diana, who is not doing so well. She's all chained up in this dungeon-looking place, um,
they're
and
going to her plan is to make Diana undergo a vivisection, which is basically cutting her open and autopsying her while she's alive,
mhm.
which is very dark.
I love this
Uh,
High Priestess character. I wish she was in more of the story because she's got a really cool design. I don't know. I think he just could do some
and
really
a
cool
fun
horror things.
personality, if a
Yeah.
very dark personality. But
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Diana is still alive and able to fight back.
Hmm.
Um,
She gets back her ability to speak and she flies out of there. Um,
Trying to find Barbara Minerva, accidentally killing the High Priestess,
mhm.
who was very old. Um,
And just extremely frail.
yes.
um,
Um,
yeah.
and is
but but yeah, so Diana catches up with Nehibka?
I think Nebka. I think the H
Nebka,
might
would you
be
just drop
more.
the H? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
If
yeah,
anyone
so
in our audience knows pronunciation on some of these names, genuinely let us know.
yeah,
Uh,
that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
uh,
Um, but anyway, yeah, so they she catches up with her. She
asks
knocks her out, um, and sees that there's a blood moon out tonight, and that means that the cheetah is going to be unleashed, and Diana freaks out over this. That's where we end the issue, going into Wonder Woman number 31, which is the best cover here, and it's so good. Oh, I
my
love it.
first note is literally best cover in the collection.
It's
Like
so good. It's such a good cover. Even right down to the fact that the title of the story is like on the bottom there, Savage Moon. It adds to just the look of the cover. I love it.
it
Um,
almost feels like a movie poster. Like
yeah, yeah, definitely.
uh like a nice movie poster.
Yeah.
So we open um back in America
Hmm.
uh with you know Inspector Indelicato and Michael Shands, and they are essentially discussing um, the gun running in Egypt and its
Hmm.
connections to Barbara Minerva,
Yeah.
which adds a nice bit of context that
Hmm.
I don't want to say Perez was missing, but Perez wasn't fully explaining.
Well, yeah, because we got very focused on what Diana was up to and Cheetah, and not that I'm complaining, it's a great way to spend a couple issues, but it's nice to get that just you get that more in perspective here.
It's also
Um,
suggesting that we are going to be slowly bringing back in more of our main, like, familiar characters, because they end the scene, we know the lasso was stolen. We need to warn Diana that she's got more than she's bargained for.
mhm,
Somehow.
yeah,
Obviously, she knows she's got more than she's bargained for. She wasn't expecting an entire offshoot of Amazons.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
Um, yeah, we
again,
continue on with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
this gun runner plot that continues on as the issue goes on, like, it's a nice backdrop for the very personal story between Diana and Barbara Minerva. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
But meanwhile, these I don't know what to call them. Middle Eastern Amazons,
the Amazons, we can just call them the Amazons.
but that could be referring to multiple Amazons.
These particular Amazons of what's shit? I can't remember the city's name, even though I just said it. But yes, these middle the Amazons of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Of
They're continuing their fight with the militia out here. A couple of them are going after Kuma and Cheetah up here. Kuma
well,
kills
I
two
believe
of
the
them.
implication is they're just going through the city in general,
Hmm.
um, as well as trying to
Just
track where they
ravaging the whole
believe that
place, it looks like.
like their lasso is.
Hmm.
And they lead a poison gas, and we also see for a brief moment of Barbara Minerva not wanting to give up her power.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and she is not looking too well there in those couple panels. You can see the skin cheetah look, sort of like looking the same way that it did in the older body that was killed before Barbara took over, back in the
yeah.
flashbacks. Um,
Um,
Meanwhile, battle continues outside as Diana gets involved. She's trying to
and
stop the fighting here.
I love that Diana is trying to always be the mediator, trying to stop
Yeah,
the fight, trying to keep people alive.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that doesn't really stop her from picking up a bow and arrow and
no, she is fighting and defending herself, but
yeah, exactly.
she is the one character who is trying to avoid bloodshed, and I think avoiding bloodshed, some portrayals of Wonder Woman don't emphasize that as much as they should. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Twitter moment. Um, but anyway, uh, she's trying to stop the fighting out here. Meanwhile, the other Amazons begin trying to like scale the building up to where Kuma is. Um,
Ida enters the fray because it's a blood moon,
mhm,
and she eventually comes to blows with Diana. Uh, and Diana is willing to kill her if she has to.
yeah,
Like, she clearly doesn't want to, but like this has gone on long enough, and so many people are in the crossfire. Like, Perez like makes you feel the weight of the destruction, even though a lot of the, which is, I mean, especially like well done considering a lot of the destruction is on characters we don't know. These are just normal. A lot of these are normal, sometimes innocent, sometimes not so innocent people getting hurt and brutalized
yeah.
by the cheetah.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Um,
And then Diana and Barbara come face to face, and we get this beautiful fight sequence between the two of them. And just some of my favorite panels in this whole story come from this fight just between the two of them. It's really really great. Um, and Diana gets rather brutal here. They make a point of calling out the fact that like Diana comes pretty close to killing Barbara in this scene. Um, and that
and, and
her hate sort of takes over in this moment, for all that Barbara has taken from the Amazons and from her specifically.
it only stops when she sees Barbara bleeding, essentially bleeding out. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you see the way Diana is drawn, just blood and scratches from the cheetah's claws all over her body. and
Mhm.
it's brutal. It's very impactful. Meriden is very good, and I mean, at showing very intense action and intense violence while skirting the Comics Code Authority, um,
Yeah, yeah.
and also
Um,
never making it feel like overly edgy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh,
And in the midst of all this, Kuma has taken quite a bit of damage. He's a frail old man. Kuma is dying, and my God, if you had like if I had told you back in Volume One that like Kuma would have like an impactful, actually emotional death here, like I know you wouldn't believe me because he's become such a genuine character over time, and seeing this here, it hurts, and it's a really impactful scene. I love it.
yeah,
Um,
I wasn't expecting it to hit so hard.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, especially considering like in his final moments, like he still just wants nothing more than to protect Barbara and protect his goddess that he worships. Um, really important,
yes,
and also as a final thing, we are told where everything is hidden, not just Diana's lasso, which she quickly gets a hold of, but also the second lost golden girdle of Gaia. Um, and it's such a big moment, I think, for this run as a whole, which shows that we're not just dealing with the immediate problems here, but problems that have been present since the beginning of this entire run. Really,
yes,
really cool. So,
and very much implying that we are going to eventually be reuniting these two tribes of Amazon somehow. We don't know
yeah,
how it's going to be, but it's going to happen.
yep.
Um,
But meanwhile, and I mean that literally, we go into Wonder Woman number 32, which is called Meanwhile, which is just sort of to catch us up on all of the rest of our supporting characters, what they're doing while Diana is on her mission here.
and this is
So
an issue that honestly shouldn't work, but it does. Like,
why shouldn't it work? I think it makes
well,
sense.
because it's not immediately following up like that's a big ending. It's like we found a second golden girdle of Gaia. Going immediately to not follow up on that is
Hmm.
a risk. But
Yeah,
Perez
yeah,
pulls it off.
he does. Yeah.
Uh,
This is split up almost like more of an anthology issue
yes.
than just an individual story in and of
Uh,
itself.
Pencils this time are done by Tom Grummett, um,
Yes. Yeah.
who is always a fun name to see.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, but what we have is we start with on Themyscira, um, and we are essentially dealing with a classic Greek hunt.
Hmm.
Now, what's interesting, they are hunting a deer, which is um, this is actually um, calling back to several Greek myths in some very interesting ways. It eventually, they eventually end up hunting a boar that kills this deer. Um, Both deers and boars have their place among the myth of Heracles, aka Hercules, with the 12 labors. The deer as well, the sort of doe harkens to Artemis, goddess of the moon, and an archer and a god associated with the hunt, which I find really interesting. All while Perez isn't like telling a myth. He's just using this really nice imagery to tell this story, and sort
Yeah.
of give it this
Because I
nice
love
mythic quality.
this whole flashback that we do here, where go back to like Diana's like first hunt, pretty much, where she chooses not to kill this deer because it's so majestic, and
Also, Diana
and
as a child, basically, like
mhm.
um,
The boar kills this kills the deer. Diana's heartbroken over this, so she goes after the boar, um, and teaches her, this lesson of the just the cycle of life and death, and it's a hard lesson for her to learn, but it's effective, I think. Perez plays it really well. Only to show us in like the present day that like the boar is not the same boar, obviously,
but a
but
boar,
yeah, abortion should
symbolically the
happen,
same
should up.
boar.
Yeah, exactly. And
Is
we do end up killing it, and it's cool. It's a nice little parallel, and it's a cool little story to tell here. Meanwhile, let's catch up with Jacob's
Ju-
number one character here.
listen,
um,
listen. I look. She is look. I wasn't expecting to find a character like this when we started this podcast, and We need more characters like this, okay? We
Okay,
need
no,
more strong, older female characters and a professorship who can be a sidekick to a superhero, okay?
sure, absolutely. um,
Um,
yeah. Uh, we see Julia is still, or I guess officially, have we gotten like confirmation that they're still like actually like dating like by the end of volume 2? I don't think we had.
it was implied, but
Yeah.
like this is like real confirmation.
Hmm.
Um, and she's still teaching at Harvard. Um, and she eventually um, is informed. Um,
By Delicato and Shands. Sorry, Indelicato and Shands.
Delicado and Shands.
Um, uh, about their information about what's going on over in over
Egypt.
Egypt, where about the fight between Diana and Barbara. Or I guess they
Ju-
still don't know that she's Barbara. Oh no, they do figure it out here, right?
yeah, Julie
Oh,
is the one that it clicks that it's the same
yeah.
face. Because this is also a very nice. I have a feeling that maybe readership on Wonder Woman was increasing around this time because we get some flashback to the earlier Cheetah stories. They're very
Yeah.
quick, but they
Hmm.
happen.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that might be to help catch some other readers up to speed on some of the stuff that's come before.
Very
Uh,
probably. Yeah. Yeah, that's where we end off there. Julia, it puts this, makes this connection, and we're gonna pick up with that soon. Meanwhile, we're gonna tell sort of our last, much longer story here in this issue, where we have a Steve Trevor story, which we haven't gotten like an issue like actually dedicated to Steve in a while. It's nice to have that here. Um,
uh,
but he meets up with Etta here, who who has had a bad day at work, pretty much because she has a new boss, and what is it, Yedziniak,
yeah, Yedziniak,
which is certainly a name. Um,
who Steve
appar-
calls a slug.
yeah, we don't know much about their backstory with Yedziniak. Um, but I mean, right away, like they show you this flashback of like like him taking over as her new boss, and like he's immediately just the worst.
His
Um,
design, his design looks evil. Looks like
yeah,
a dick.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Um, but yeah, so we find out all about that, and Steve isn't the most understanding because he's just trying to like tell her something the whole time, and sort of like just almost talk over her, I guess, and she doesn't take too kindly to that. But
and
we find out what. Oh, sorry, go
it
ahead.
plants some seeds for some rocks in their relationship,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
find fascinating because it's very good character drama, and it's very nice to see a relationship, like a healthy relationship, portrayed as having issues like
Hmm.
that have to be overcome. That people have
But
to
I
admit
think,
that.
but I think the more important Steve Trevor relationship here is the one that's immediately brought up afterwards, which is
Yes,
basically Steve Trevor and Hermes becoming the odd couple, and it's it's great. Hermes just decides one day that he's Steve Trevor's roommate, and I think that's great. I don't know, it just makes for a really funny scene between the two of them,
yeah.
and Hermes
Also,
is like,
Hermes transforms into a suit.
"Yep,"
Like,
but keeps the helmet on, and then
yeah, he
then
keeps his
takes it
wings
away.
held.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just kind of insane, but it's
Yeah.
great. But it's great.
Hmm.
Um, there is a tribute to Hermes in New Hampshire. Um, that uh, you know, and we get some nice character moments where Hermes is alone and he has to reflect on himself. That yeah, I've sort of changed.
Hmm.
Um, and I found Diana to be a fountain of wisdom far beyond her years.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's fascinating.
And then he kind of freaks out. um, he begins. Why does he start doing this? I'm not entirely sure. Um,
He so he built this temple and he wants to essentially convert it
mm,
um, to Diana and almost humanity.
yeah, and
So
as he
he's
does it, there's this implied connection between him and Manalapi, I
yeah,
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, like I know it's hard. I'm just saying, like I think I'm pronouncing that right. Manalith. I
Yes.
don't know. And so they call it for Gaia at the same time, and it's
I think
we're
the
sort of
idea is
setting up
that this
for
is the moment where Diana discovered the girdle.
yeah, yep. Um, and meanwhile, Vanessa gets not Vanessa, Julia gets a call from a mysterious voice that we learn very quickly is
Not
was
Diana.
not Diana, but what was her name? Faruka, right?
Yeah, Faruka.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Who's one of the other Amazons in Egypt that is not a fan of Diana. Um, and they ride off into the night, and we go into Wonder Woman number 33 now? 33? Yeah, 33. Secrets in the Sand. And
and I love this one feeling like opening like a title sequence.
yeah, a DC Comics production, George Perez writer, Chris Marion penciler, whatever. They present Wonder Woman, Secrets in the Sand. And it's cool. I like it.
And this is the issue where we can really, because like Cheetah has been captured, so
Oh, also, we did totally forget to mention in the last issue with Diana, where she defeated Cheetah, that the Queen died. Um,
yes.
yeah, she died in the middle of all that, in the middle of that battle. She was killed by the Cheetah. And
So there's now this power vacuum
yeah, and also
almost.
as such, these Amazons want vengeance on Cheetah, as she's the reason that the Queen died, and Diana obviously doesn't want to let Cheetah get killed unnecessarily, especially after Diana just went through that whole character moment where she chose not to kill Cheetah. But yeah,
So, and Diana's
uh,
called out to Hermes for help for divine intervention. Uh,
mhm,
and there's some interesting exploration that these Amazons have a code of honor, even
mhm.
if it's a much harsher code of honor
Yeah,
than
yeah,
what
definitely.
Diana would be used to. Um, and they come across this shop that we know Veruca was in and used to call Julia. Um, and we find the police are involved,
Mhm.
uh, and the police discuss the Cheetah Woman, and we eventually see Barbara Minerva as the Cheetah,
Yeah.
stuck as implied to be stuck as the Cheetah,
Mhm.
um,
It is
in a
really,
straitjacket.
and honestly, a pretty sad scene. Like I don't know, I found this really sad actually. Just seeing her like she doesn't know what happened to Kuma. She's stuck in this feral body that is not doing nothing to quell her rage, of course. Um, and she's just pissed at the world. And I don't know. It's just kind of sad to see her character like this in this moment, especially after we have had so much time recently to get to know Barbara Minerva and where she comes from and why she's such an interesting character. I don't know. I just found the scene especially striking to me on reread. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Uh,
Faruka comes in. She wants to kill Cheetah. Diana does not want to let her. Um, and Diana jumps in to save Cheetah from being killed. Or actually, no, what is it? Oh yeah, again, adding on to the sadness of the scene, like Cheetah just starts like bashing herself against a wall, and then it just stops her from basically trying to kill herself. Um, again, just really, really hard hitting scenes here. I love it.
very powerful.
Yeah, we get to
Um,
see continuing the police investigation here as Julia and Vanessa. Well, just Julia, but Vanessa's listening in, is contacted about all this. Um, Meanwhile, Diana and the other Amazons discuss the golden girdle of Gaia that has been found recently, and that there's this power. There's this connection between the lasso and the girdle. When they're close to each other, they begin to glow, and it like knocks Faruka back. Um, as Diana is sort of questioned about what's going on here, and then Diana is told the backstory of how these other Amazons were created, or how they at least split off from our main Amazons. So yeah, let's get into this flashback, which is most of what the rest of this issue is.
yes.
Um,
So George Perez understands that Theseus was a dick. Um, Theseus, Joey, you might know as the one who defeated the Minotaur.
mhm.
Um, and so that is like the one vaguely positive thing Theseus did, mythologically speaking. Because before that, he and his brother Pirithous tried to descend to the underworld to steal Persephone, aka Hades' wife.
Hmm.
Um, and then after defeating the Minotaur, he was only able to navigate the labyrinth because of Ariadne's string. And then he abandoned Ariadne after promising to take her as his wife. Theseus was a dick. Um, and this idea of the of Theseus is his misdeeds as king of Athens post returning to Athens, um, and taking an Amazon who refuses to be taken, is that's our starting point for how these Amazons split off.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think it's honestly fascinating. Uh, you have this group of Amazons that um, essentially, you know, moved moved away, and we eventually cut back into the present, so Diana can actually react to this flashback.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, um, this idea is that Theseus started the idea that all Amazons were man-hating wild beasts when they weren't. They just didn't want
Mhm.
to be pawns in the game of a cruel king.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, you have this idea that actually it was um, you know that um, Ariadne was the one to actually slay Antiope, who eventually became the first queen of the Amazons.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's filling in some backstory from way back in Wonder Woman #1.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
in a
It's just sort of this idea that there is this just sort of secret history because it seems the Amazons of Paradise Island have forgotten about this splinter group, I guess, that became the Amazons of that we see here.
I
Um,
believe it's of Bana Magdal,
mhm.
is
that
sort of what their group.
that Diana just like never heard about,
Yes.
I don't know, I just love the way that Diana reacts to all this because she takes this information in, but also just isn't entirely um
Certain about it.
understanding of it, you know.
Well, it's also because it seems that this group of Amazons have become almost victims to a cycle of violence. There's a point in the flashback where Perez essentially, Amazons killing man, man killing Amazons, and all the way to the Trojan War, where which is just a war that ends with the sacking of Troy and an eradication of an entire city. Um, so it's all about this tragedy of just these Amazons are violent, um, and have never left man's world and evolved with the times. Um, Jumping ahead quite a bit to the end after the history is sort of done, we learn about that they kept their weapons sharp and let their weapons evolve so they could make guns,
Hmm.
um, and experimented with poisons, uh, and only kept going basically with taking whatever men they needed to,
Yeah.
um, and letting them keep just having them to keep going.
Hmm.
Like
That is, of
there's a
course,
reference
when
to breeding stables. Um,
which is certainly an idea. um,
and we end the issue with Hermes transporting in, um, coming into not normal Hermes, a very wrathful Hermes.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And that's where we end our issue. We go into Wonder Woman number 34, which, like, I remember when I first read this actually, and I saw this cover, I was like, is this like Cyborg Wonder Woman? What are we doing here?
it's like what?
It's certainly a cover, which yeah, we'll get into it a little bit. But this is the Tournament of the Crown, and once again picking up with very vengeful Hermes. Comes in, Diana trying to like calm him down and stop him from unleashing his wrath on these Amazons. and seeing Diana, he does calm down. And she begins trying to explain everything to him. And meanwhile, Faruka is plotting in the background. She begins putting her plan into motion that we'll catch up with in a little bit. Meanwhile, Steve has arrived here in the Eastern Desert with Julia and just Julia, yeah, just him and Julia.
It's just
Um,
Julia.
yeah,
Um,
and
they're
they meet up. Sorry, go ahead.
they're parlaying with Egyptian authorities in a capacity of civilians. Steve being referred to as a retired colonel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Steve is like, we believe we can help you find, who destroyed this town. And the Egyptian authorities, uh, and it turns out, they obtain the information from a god, having Hermes. I don't know if it's Hermes Caduceus exactly or a replica of it, imbued with his power, because he seems to have his Caduceus when he's raining, fire of the gods down from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes. Um, and when we go back to the Amazons, what's interesting, they don't believe Hermes is a god,
Yeah,
which is an interesting separation, because they have been stuck in man's world
yeah,
essentially.
and they have like completely forgotten the ways of the Amazons that they have splintered off from, which is really really interesting. I love that. Um, but
And
Steve gets up in the air. Julia's in contact with him.
as
Um,
Hermes has created this sandstorm, it's making it difficult to enter. And they're
mhm.
just trying to look in to see what is happening. Um, and the Egyptian
While
authorities want to just go right in and bomb the area.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
While Diana,
Hermes inspects the cheetah. Diana tells him everything that happened with her. Um, and once again, Faruka is going up against and I forgot how to pronounce the name
Nebka,
again. Nevka, thank you. It's getting very late over here. But yeah, that's all happening. Uh,
Hermes is unable to heal the cheetah.
yes,
Um,
yeah. And so Diana breaks Cheetah out of there. And Cheetah's like completely immobile at this point. Um,
yeah, to get
then
her
and
and the
Hermes,
girdle out of this place.
yeah.
Uh,
They rush into this room that is filled with these heads on
on
spikes
spikes.
of these Amazons. And it's just surprisingly gruesome image here. Um, Oh man.
And
And we find out that Nepka is dead here. It's just oh my god. Ugh, so messed up.
and
And then
Veruca unveils the new queen of these Amazons, uh,
Shimtar.
Shimtar, who is an armored, gun-toting, almost imitation of Diana.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, because I really do love the design actually. It's a really cool look. Um but yeah, Shimtar is unleashed. There's this fight that breaks out between her and Diana. And that's pretty much most of the rest of the issue, right? It's just them
it's
fighting.
very good action.
Yeah.
But Diana, eventually thinks using the lasso might work. Um, and it's just trying to cleverly outrun her. While Diana's had like a day or two to recover, she's still beaten up about Cheetah and from, that entire fight.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, you know, Hermes is being taken to where the girdle is, and the Egyptian authorities are gonna blow the city to hell, and
Yeah.
that's where our issue ends.
Yeah, and we
And
go into our final issue of the collection, Wonder Woman number 35. This is Journey's End. And
and part of me wonders is if Perez was thinking about leaving the book at this point, um,
uh I'm not sure about that because there's
or it was
still a lot
just
of there's still a lot that Perez does in the back half of his run. Um
Yeah, but like, because this feels like it could have been a conclusion. It could have
Well,
also just been
it's
because,
definitely the culmination of pretty much all of Perez's plot points up to this point. But there
yeah,
are a few loose threads if you remember back to a couple of things in Volume Two. Um,
yes,
yeah.
I do.
So.
It also just it feels like this also just is a fitting end to this collection as well,
Oh, most
and this
definitely.
story arc. Because Egyptian firepower is and war is breaking out.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and it is drawn by Marinin as just the absolute chaos that it is meant to be. Um, yeah, just fire through the air. Planes going everywhere while Diana is fighting Shimtar throughout all this. Um, Steve and Julia just trying to stay safe down on the ground, trying to stop the escalating conflict with the Egyptian firepower that they're trying to unleash. Just a really great big action oriented issue, and that's most of it to be fair. But it is very very gripping, and Marinin really crushes the art in this one.
yeah, Faruka tries to rally the Amazonian forces against the encroaching firepower. Diana eventually gets the lasso and is able to use that to lasso Shimtar. Her prayers are answered, and Hermes is able to use you know his power to help and assist. Uh, right as we end in an explosive fire.
Yeah,
Um, that Julie and Steve see um, Diana, Hermes, and Barbara Minerva laid out in the sand.
and it is actually Barbara Minerva at this point. She's no longer a cheetah, which is very nice. Um, as everyone sort of comes to, Diana has actually held on to her lasso and the golden girdle of Gaia. I always feel like I'm going to get tongue tied when I say that, the golden girdle of Gaia.
It's very
um,
alliterative.
it is, it is. But she has it. Everyone reunites with each other. Vanessa meets back up with Indelicato Shans and goes to see Julia and Diana, who are back. And
And
it's this really nice reunion scene. Um,
punctuated nicely with Steve and Etta taking a break from their relationship
yeah,
on a very nice terms. Again, I very much like that this sort of mature adult relationship is allowed between these two
yeah,
characters.
yeah, and it's a very
Um,
positive environment created between the two of them. It's very
yes.
nice. Yeah,
Um, and you know, we end with just then some very, very nice reunions. Um, Diana meeting Vanessa at her school as she flies back off to Themyscira to return the girdle to the Amazons, reunite with her mother, and you know, we end with the Amazons on a high, and that's where the issue in the collection ends. Just,
yeah, and it's a really great ending and just a really fantastic collection overall. Um,
just very strong.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's yeah, just really really great. There's a reason that it's easily our favorite of the three volumes we've covered so far on the podcast, and
yeah,
I though we won't be getting back to the run for a while. It's a pretty good point to end it actually. Well, before we take a proper like break from the run for a while, and I don't know. I still am very excited to get back to it for when we do eventually do that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a great run for obvious reasons. Everyone should
It'll
read
be
it.
like coming back to an old friend.
It will.
Um,
It really will. It's gonna be great. I feel like that's once we get back from our upcoming Marvel block, it'll be really nice to get back to a lot of these DC runs we've been doing. And
yes,
yeah,
our mega Marvel block, shall we say?
yeah. So all right, I guess that about does it,
Does
doesn't it?
it?
That's
It was
yeah.
amazing. There's no adapted material. Um,
No, doesn't
honestly,
need to
kind of
be.
sadly,
I mean, it would be a pretty cool story to adapt. I would love to see that. This run adapted.
with every volume, I'm like, can we get more of the Perez run adapted somehow?
Right?
Like,
Oh my god, just do a sequel to the 2009 animated movie. Like, come on, just get more. But whatever. Yeah, it's so good. It really is. And if you've listened to this whole thing and it thought it sounded interesting, even if you haven't read it, just please read it. It needs to be read to be believed because it really is just such a fantastic comic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It
So,
is amazing. Best thing from Perez that we've read so far.
yeah, I agree. Most
Honestly.
definitely.
Um,
It's our sixth Perez episode now, right?
seventh technically.
Seven. What has he done in between?
You're forgetting about A Lonely Place of Dying,
Oh, that's
which
correct. That is correct. Yeah, he did do art in that, and
he did art and he co-plotted it. I
yeah,
believe.
yep, yeah. That's awesome.
Um,
Oh God, I
yeah.
love Perez. What a great talent. Um. Anyway, all right, Jacob.
All right.
All right.
I
Before we get into this, so you're about to learn what episode 45 is. It is worth noting to the listeners that since our last episode, Jacob does know also what episode 47 is
seven
because
is
of the way we've had to plan out our guests coming up. So,
yes.
so you do know what that is. I won't say what it is for the sake of the podcast. I'll let our listeners find out for when that comes up. But Jacob, um,
Yes.
so I, for those listening, also, we're recording this on June 14th, 2023. It is Jacob's birthday today. He
Yes.
has an hour and 20 minutes in his time zone left in his birthday. And Jacob, I'd like to give you a birthday gift.
Oh, you really
Jacob,
don't have to.
oh, I really would, though. I mean, I guess you don't have to accept it. If you really want to keep doing things the way that we are, that's fine, too. But I would like to give you a choice. You'll learn what episode 45 is today, and also I would like to give you the option between episodes 46, 48, and 49 to learn what one of those are also tonight.
Okay.
Totally up to you. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I
If you want to find out episode to episode like we have been, you can do that too. But I thought I'd give you the option and be nice for once. So
okay. I I don't. I kind of want to also know what 46 is, but I would also like to give you my guess for 40, my couple of guesses for 46 after I give you my guess for 45.
you can so you want to do 46?
Yes, I want to do
Want to do
46.
46? Okay. So all right, give me
So
your
it
guesses. So
doesn't.
you're gonna find out what 45 and 46 are right now. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
What are your
birthday to me.
guesses?
So my guess for 45 is clearly, obviously, it's going to be the next two volumes of The Flash by Francis Manapul and Brian Bucalato. Like, that's got to be what it is, right?
We'll find out in a second. And
We'll find out in a second.
what are your guesses for 46?
So 46 is, because you've said it's standalone, that's the thing that's been messing with me. Because I had a feeling that we would be doing a Vertigo block leading. Initially, I thought this continuation block was going to be a Vertigo block.
Oh, okay. Oh, with the 41 to 45?
But now I believe 47 to 49 is going to be a Vertigo block.
Okay.
Mainly knowing what 47 is. So his 46, because it's technically not Vertigo, it's the precursor to Vertigo. Now, I already possibly gave you the guess of Preacher, but I don't think that's what it is. Is 46 going to be Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore?
All right, it's reveal time. Here we go.
It's reveal time.
All right, so 45. I mean, yeah, it's the easiest guess of them all. Next episode of Face Comics, we'll be covering The Flash volumes 2 and 3 from the New 52. This is Rogue's Revolution and Guerrilla Warfare. Yeah, it's of course you were gonna get that right.
I'm very excited. That was just pure deduction of this block being
yeah, it's the only. It was either that or I guess we could have continued Suicide Squad, but Suicide Squad is still pretty recent. So
or maybe we could have continued John's Justice League, but
that's true. But we also did that even more recently.
Yeah, I was gonna say we did that recently too. So
yeah,
power of deduction.
Yeah, exactly. So so that was so pretty easy guess. You're right about that. So I'm really glad you want to know what 46 is. Because okay, before I say what 46 is, I'll say this. While 41 to 45 is a block, it's continuations. We continued New Teen Titans, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and Flash. I will also say that technically, in a way, 42 to 46 is a kind of a block as well.
Oh, Okay.
that I'm sort of calling to myself Justice League, just individual Justice League members. So,
Okay.
episode 46 is something you've been waiting for a while.
It
Episode
is.
46 is Green Arrow Year 1 by Andy Diggle and Jock.
Oh! Oh! Ooh! Ooh! Finally! Why didn't I just throw that dart back on the
I
board?
love the sheer amount of times that you have guessed that we'll be doing Green Arrow, and you've always been wrong.
I have been wrong. Oh.
But it's finally here. Yeah, so not next episode, but the episode after, episode 46, will be Green Arrow Year 1. Our first proper Green Arrow comic. It's a 6-issue miniseries. It's pretty fucking great. And yeah, that'll be that. So, yeah.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
That's a lot. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So now you actually know what the next 3 episodes are. Because again, you had to know what 47 was for the sake of planning out guests. Because we will have not 1, but 2 guests on episode 47.
Yes.
So yeah, that's going to be awesome. And wow, we're getting really close to episode 50, aren't we?
Yes. I'm gonna say I'm quite glad that I now know what 46 is. So we can, because of the 2 guests, I want to make sure we give us plenty of time to get that recorded.
Indeed.
So
I will say also I'm already like halfway through my Flash reread, so I finished Rogue's Revolution already.
from what I recall, from Move Forward, I'm guessing it's a fairly easy read because
It's fast paced, rightfully so.
Yes.
One of the issues in Rogue's Revolution is an annual, so it's fairly long. But, you know.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so that's that. Yeah. All right. Well, one more time, happy birthday! I'm glad we recorded on your birthday because I know how much you've enjoyed George Perez's Wonder Woman, and that was a pretty fun one to record. So
Yes.
I enjoyed it. All right. As always, wherever you're listening to us, be sure to leave a rating and subscribe. Be sure to subscribe to Blood Donut Studios. At the time of recording, we're close to 200 subscribers on there, so be sure to subscribe to that. Maybe you'll be the 200th. Who knows? If not, get us closer. That'd be awesome. On the channel, be sure to check out the Star Trek videos that I'm doing with my brother, also named Jacob, not to be confused with this Jacob right here. Also, check out Breaking Brian. We're releasing our video on El Camino soon, so that's been fun. I've been doing that with Brian Corrigan. It's been a great time.
You've also been going through Star Trek.
I literally just mentioned that.
I'm trying to think of what else you are doing. Sorry, it's getting late. Can you tell?
It's getting very late. It's almost midnight for me right now. So yeah, it's fun. Anything for you? Blog. Check out your blog.
My blog. When this has come out, I will have just released a review of Doctor Who Fear Her, which I will have some complicated thoughts on, as well as I have been reviewing Star Trek weekly. I believe The Apple is the name of the episode.
Yeah, The Apple will have just come out.
Will just come out, yes.
Yeah. So the next episode actually is The Doomsday Machine.
Yes. But yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So check those out. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. I'll leave our link trees down in the description below. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be leaving Wonder Woman by George Perez Volume 3 on Amazon, linked in the description below, as well as our next readings of Flash, Rogue's Revolution, and Guerrilla Warfare. So that'll be really fun. Check those out. I'm really excited to continue Flash, actually, because Flash is like the main leaguer that we've covered the least of so far. So the fact that we're doing a double Booker next time should be give us a fair bit of Flash exposure, and also the fact that we're covering some of his biggest villains across those 2 volumes. That'll be really cool to do. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So, all right, thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to join us next time. Until then, this has been Joey Morgan
and Jacob Licklider. Goodbye.